Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Ariel Tzadok here from the KosherTorah School, found online at www.KosherTorah.com. We are continuing in our series of lessons in an old book of classical Kabbalah called Ohel Moed. This is going to be lesson number 4 in this series. And as always, we're not just going to read a book. In my opinion, sorry, that's kind of boring. You know something? If you might remember, for those of you who studied with me, the Sefer Tzeruf, the opening Mishnah, when it speaks about the 32 wondrous paths and the like, spoke how God created the world with what's called 3 versions of the Hebrew word sapar. The first one was Sefer, which means book. Oh, we're going to get into this deep tonight. The second one is sapar, which is the one who actually is the reader of the book. And then the third is the sipor, which is the story which is read out of the book. Now, what's all that mean? Well, what it means is this. There's a primordial pattern, which we call the book. And then there comes consciousness, which interacts with, bonds with, unites with the book, and doesn't change the book, but brings it to life, thus creating the story. Now, if any of you have ever been around the proverbial campfire and have the storyteller tell the story, you very well know that it's not so much the story, it's the telling thereof that makes all the difference in the world. Just recently, we celebrated the holiday of Purim, which, of course, you know, we read the book of Esther, Megillat Esther, in the synagogue. Now, I remember a time in my life, years and years and years and years, and even more years ago, dating this is over 40 years ago, how's that? When I was in Beit Wagan in Jerusalem at the Chidah synagogue. And this was even before I was even fluent in the Hebrew language. And I remember we had an Iraqi, a Bavli Bal Koreh, and I remember him very well. His name was Avraham Nisan, alav shalom. And the Rabbi Nisan was one of the Hasidei Bet El. He was a Talmud of Rav Kaduri. And when he read that Megillat Esther, there was such passion, such feeling, such emphasis, that you didn't even need to be able to know the language. You understood what he was saying because he knew how to read the book and create the story. Now, this is a very, very important point because today, whatever we're dealing with, especially with religion, so many people read the books. And so many people, literally, we got to stay with the books. Yeah, because we're religious. We got to do blah, blah, blah. But they're bored with the books. Because they look at the books in such a dry way. And it leaves such a sour taste in the mouth. And this is what religion has become. And now you got to follow this through human psychology. Because tonight, our topic is letter permutations, the secret of Tzeruf. And what do letters combine and create? Words. And what do words then form? Sentences and paragraphs, which then form the book. So even before we get into the, in quote, writing of the book, we better get into an understanding of what we do with books. Now, we all know a big, it's not a secret, a reality of our human experience. And This is actually echoed way back in the Torah and especially elaborated in the Kabbalah. So I'm going to I was planning to go in the direction of psychology first, but I decided just right now as I was thinking, no, I'm going to go into the Kabbalah way and then bring it into psychology. How's that? Okay? So you'll follow my reading the story. In the Bible, we darn well know there are two names of God. Elohim, the one who created the heavens and the earth, and then that strange weirdo name, we say Havaya, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. And we know the great proclamation is the Lord is God, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is Elohim. And we fail to recognize this significance because we look at this as some type of a philosophical statement of monotheism as opposed to the underlying energetic reality that it represents. You see, in the Kabbalah, it references that the name Elohim in and throughout the Bible is always a reference to God as God is revealed in nature. And the name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is that level of consciousness that interacts with nature. So, going back to what we said about the Sefer Yetzirah, the Sefer, if you will, is like Elohim. The Sapar is like Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. And the Sipur, that is the living Torah, which is the purpose of creation. Now, notice you had three. Now, this is discussed all the time in Kabbalistic stuff. You have, using the Greek words, the thesis, the antithesis, and synthesis. You have right, left, balance in the middle. Now, why is or does this exist? You know, you've read Genesis as much as I have. We all know God is the all-powerful, almighty, does whatever he wants, right? So how come God just doesn't say, bam? All I have to say is bam, and everything came into being just like that. Snap of the fingers. Who the heck needs 6 days, this first, this second, this third? Waste of time. Come on, God. Why don't you listen to us human beings? We'll tell you how to get things done, right? Bam, 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 bam. All right? Let's take Bill Gates and stick him up in heaven. He'll tell God how to get things done. He'll run the universe like he runs Microsoft, right? Whoa! I'm sure Mr. Gates might actually enjoy that. But let's not get political or social. Getting back to the point. This world operates in a natural way. For those of you who've gotten in deeper into the Kabbalah, especially the Kitvei Ha'ari, Rabbi Chaim Vital elaborates in the beginning of the Otzrot, the Etz Chaim, about two orders of the Sefirot. One are called Igulim, and the other is called Yosher. One are spheres, and one are straight lines, meaning the image of a man. What the heck is all this babble about? Really, it's showing us that there are two modes and methods of operation in the universe. That which we call the natural order, and then that which we call the human way. And the two are not the same. The natural way, look at nature. You want to understand nature? Learn Darwin, survival of the fittest. The natural way is very harsh, very hostile, very violent, and the focus on the natural way is one simple thing: survival. Survival of the fittest. Now, what on earth does any of this have to do with us? Because when we want to talk about, in quote, survival of the fittest, where does that come from? What is the motivation? And the answer is really simple if you pay attention. The answer is the motivation in nature is one simple thing: life. Life. Everything revolves around the propagation of life. When we say in the beginning God emanated light, and we're going to talk about light here. Light is life. the life force energy. That's what the original light was in the Bible. Many of you might not have ever heard of Robert Lanza's work of biocentrism. Very important reading. I encourage it. Biologist, big scientist. And he says, if we're going to look for that theory of everything, the grand unified theory that's going to put everything together, then you better understand the missing link is life itself. That the entire process of the expansion and expression of the universe is for the multiple, like that word multiple, keep that in mind, expressions of life. So the fundamental force of expression of life is what creates galaxies, which causes worlds to exist, which ignites suns, and all the things that we see in the natural world. And if you look at every species that has developed, how and what do they develop? They develop means and techniques of survival. They become predators, and the bigger predators win. That's pretty much the way it works. That's the natural way. Everybody should know this. If you tomorrow or today are going to go and live out in nature, you're going to cast aside everything of civilization and you want to go out and live like a human animal, how long do you think you're going to survive? Well, remember, you're not a very good animal. We're bald. We don't have claws. We don't have that viciousness as the animal kingdom does. Oh, we can be pretty nasty and vicious, especially towards one another. But it's not the same. If we were to go live out in the Amazon, just as a stripped down naked human being, well, you'd be alligator food in no time. You'd probably stop by a nice little river and say, oh, look at these beautiful fish. I think I'll pet the fish, not knowing that they're piranhas. And you just became lunch. That's the natural way. That is the rule of Elohim. So you'll find in Kabbalistic teachings that the name Elohim is said to refer to din, severity, judgment. Why? Because it's a very narrow band. That's what judgment means. Very narrow and limited in limitation. A narrow band of focus exclusively on life. The original light, Keter, will, goes straight down the center column into Malchut, materializes as life. Symbolically, we refer to that as the spheres. Boom, 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 in the natural order. Dramatic pause here because something else from out of this world was also created. Again, Rab Chaim, he refers to this as the Yosher, or the Sefirot in the forms of the diagonals and the columns that we understand it, which we call the image of man. And here we are as human beings. And a point that's made very clear in the Bible and elaborated immensely in the Kabbalah. Our human souls, which we call our Adamic true selves, they're not indigenous to this earth. Our physical bodies, yeah, monkeys. We all get it. We all know it. So, yeah, okay, evolution's got it right. But something happened to these monkeys where something possessed them. And all of a sudden, something grew in the brain. It was like a tumor. And that's our intellectual side. And all of a sudden, we became really super smart monkeys. Yeah. What the Bible says, that God breathed into man the soul of life. But here's a point that you'll see. It's referenced in the Midrashim, especially in the Kabbalah. We discussed this in our lessons from the Sharab Psukim, from the Kitvei Hari. It's part of one of the courses we have, available to you on KosherTorah.com, where in which it is said that Adam and Eve were originally beings of light. Now, when I say light here, I'm not talking about that same light. They were energetic beings from a higher dimension. I addressed this issue in my disclosure essays, which is freely available now, front page of KosherTorah.com. And they are now published as an addendum to the second edition of Aliens, Angels, and the Demons, which is presently available on Amazon.com. And I made a chapter. And I put the chapter in the form of a story. And I wrote about our space brothers. Go read the story, go read the essay. Like I said, available in the disclosure essays in book form and for free online. And I said how we had a disaster here on Earth. I didn't get into the details, it's not important. And the disaster happened and it's time to rebuild. And, if we had a disaster here on Earth, what would we want to do? Rebuild? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, along come our space brothers. And our space brothers say, yeah, we're going to help you rebuild. And we're going to rebuild things not the way they were, but in the way we want them to be. Well, the original indigenous humans said, well, we don't need you. We don't want you. And we certainly don't want you coming in here and changing the way things were. Who the heck are you to come and tell us what to do? Isn't that the way we would think today? Somebody's asking me about this is our gift for donations. Check my Kosher Torah emails every day. For those who make a donation, $180, we send them a free t-shirt. So that's why it's there. But anyway, yes, it is. It is Kitvei Malachim, but that's besides the point. Space Brothers, they're coming down here and they're dictating to us. It sounds like the plot of a science fiction movie, right? We're suffering, we're weak, they come in and they want to take over. Man, that sounds like something that Steven Spielberg could write about, right? It'd be a big thing about how we want to be free and emancipate ourselves from their influence, right? Well, guess what? Those space brothers, they're us. The Adamic souls who came from the outside and said, we're going to change things. We're going to look at the old civilization where it was imbalanced and improper and correct the order of things. And this led to the indigenous struggle between the old race and us. And the old race, which were, or one part of them was physical, one part of them was not. One part of them was more humanoid, one part of them was not. And we came and put all of them together and gave them a name. And we called them, you ready? Shadim, demons. Our brothers and sisters in Islam, they understood this. They understand this and know about the jinn. Been here long before us. They are the pre-Adamic civilizations. Are they physical? Well, remember what Avot Rabbi Natan, what our sages say about them. Like us, they can eat and drink. They sexually procreate. They can certainly intermarry with human beings, and they die. So it should be telling you something about them. I'm not here to talk about demons tonight, so I'm not going to elaborate on this. We've discussed this in other places. We're here to talk about letter permutations. Letter permutations. So, the space brothers who came were us, the Adamic souls. We originally came to this planet with a completely different energy, vibration, and frequency. So much so that our original materialized form was energetic, not physical. And if we were not, shall we say, corrupted, that's the story of the Nachash in the Garden of Eden. Our sages say very clearly, remember that the word Nachash, snake. Well, we all know that the snake and Eve had a nice conversation. Well, our sages say that snake stood erect in human form, had a backbone. And obviously it also spoke and had arms and legs, and it was a humanoid reptilian. I'm not going to go into that. We'll talk about that with the Shadim, with the Tili, with the Tzerufim. We'll discuss all of that again in other literature. But now, getting back to our story here. Our souls got stuck in that Elohim rigidity. And we've been trying to open it up back to Yud-Kei Vav-Kei consciousness ever since. God's plan. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And what's the proclamation of the Torah? Yud-Kei Vav-Kei hu ha-Elokim. That Yud-Kei Vav-Kei and Elokim, the fluidity, the rigidity, the higher dimension, the lower dimension, merge to become one. And here we are today. And how we do this is through the permutation of letters. And that's why we do it. And that's why I'm giving you the story behind the text. So, let's just continue here. I'm reading here from the book. He says here, Dalacha ahi shamrenu el. Know my brother, God protect you. Kodem kol davar shebara kadosh baruch hu chideshu bara ha'otiyot. Before God created anything, he created the letters. U'b'tzeruf ha'otiyot bara olamo. And in the combination of letters does everything exist. He gives example. If I take an aleph and I put it with a bet, you get av, father. If I take a bet and I put it with a nun, you get ben, son. And if I take the bet and put it in the middle of the letters kuf and resh, I get keber, which is grave. Or I could take the bet and put it between shin and tav and get Shabbat. Oh, all these cool things. All right? So he goes and makes some moralistic points about this. But now let's discuss what this is all about and its relationship to everything that we've been talking about. For those of you who are familiar with the meditative traditions, letter permutations play a very important part of how this is done. What we call Tzeruf permutation. It's actually a mathematical thing. I remember when my son was learning math in high school, they actually had a chapter in his math book about permutations. You know what permutations are. It's real simple. It's the different formula of combinations of single numbers. So I can have 1, 2, 3. Or I can have 1, 3, 2. Or I can have 2, 3, 1. Or I can have 2, 1, 3. Or I can have 3, 1, 2, or 3, 2, 1, and then go back over and over again. So what? What does it have to do with us? All right? Tomorrow morning, I got to go to work. Right? I got stuff to do. Who the heck gives a blankety blank about all these letters and stuff? We must. Because we have this lie that comes from that Elohim orientation of consciousness, which tries to block things into a rigid form and blocks out all the others. This way, no other way. 1, 2, 3, shut up with all that other garbage. Don't give me this 1, 3, 2, 2, 1, 3, 1, 2, blah, blah. Shut up! 1, 2, 3, that's it. Really? That's not it. There are multiple ways things are. All right? This is the meaning of a pasuk in the Torah which says, Barov am hadrat melech. In the multitude of the people is the glory of God. What that means, and this is the wonderful, beautiful thing about creation. Look at DNA for an example. How many human beings have ever existed? I don't know the number, to be honest. Every single one, even identical twins, has a different DNA. Pretty slick. All the different combinations. We have how many stars in the visible universe? You try counting. Okay? Now, you can have, the sets where you can have 1 times 2 times 3. Take all 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet and go 22 times 21 times 20 times 19 times 18. Go all the way back down. and you get a number like septillion, something, a big, big number, which some have postulated might be close to the number of stars existing in the galaxy. What we understand is that each and every one, is a different combination. And this is the wonder and the glory and the purpose of life, is that each and every structure that is possible to exist does exist. That is how come we have a quantum multiverse. It's because every potential of existence also exists. Every single one is a combination of different letter structures, combinations. So therefore, in our meditative tradition, we will perform all different kinds of permutations. For example, this is something right out of the Sefer Yetzirah. We practice this in all the different forms as well. You take the letter Aleph, and you can merge it with the letters of Yud, K, Vav, K. And many will do this with different vowels, the A, E, I, O, U, or if you follow the system of Rabbi Eliezer Gemizah with also the Shva. Everybody does 5 by 5, he does 6 by 6. So he's special. But either way, we come up with all of these different combinations of letters and sounds. And some say, oh, so mystical and magical. No, it's not. Nothing to do with mystic. Nothing to do with magic. There's no such thing as mystic or magic. But what it does is it opens our minds so that we come to an awareness that everything is not as rigid as we think. So therefore, when we want to say, this is the only way, but reality and existence show us a different way, well, what do? Now, I'm sure many of you might have been familiar with a Taoist concept called Wu Wei, which means the best way to interfere is not to interfere. Go with the flow, right? In our Torah tradition, we're told to be servants of Hashem. Now, let's just digress for a second to discuss that. What does it mean to be a servant of Hashem? If you still believe the myth, it is a myth, that God is a little old man with a beard, white beard, of course, sitting on a cloud somewhere, and the photograph of that, of course, is now on the Sistine Chapel from Michelangelo. Well, we haven't really come far from old forms of idolatry. Now, the name of God as we know God, Elohim, means Lord, power, and authority. And a point that the rabbi in our book goes in to explain emphatically right next is a topic about angels. And we're going to get to that tonight. Why? Because when you use the name Elohim, it is also referring to any and all authorities who are in charge of the structure in the system. A point that our author makes about the letters and the numbers, and why he opens up with talking about Aleph and Bet, etc., is because he wants to now introduce to us the nature of reality. First, he states here, Ot Aleph, Hi Tehilat Otiyot, beginning of the letters, right? Ve'moreh al Achdut Gemora, it indicates complete and pure unity. Right? Ritzono lomar, meaning she'me'amitat yehudo bara kol nivraim. So in the ultimate essence, everything comes forth. Aleph gamken mora techilat chidush. Aleph also is the beginning of the revelation of things. Shehu tzorah bilvad. It is only the image of things. And that's what he calls the supernal world. And this is what he calls sechel pashut, simple thought, mind. And this is the world of the Sefirot and the attributes. And then he discusses Bet. Remember how a Torah begins with the letter Bet. Before I get to the Bet, let's just talk about Aleph. Aleph, the original pattern, the original book, the original form of existence, the original thesis, is what it is. That, later Kabbalah, we call it the world of Atzilut. You'll find that a lot of the Jewish teachings on this, yes, really does come from Neoplatonic sources. They overlap one another. It's not a contradiction or degradation. It's actually the fulfillment of a prophecy from the Torah where it says that Yafet would dwell in the tents of Shem. But I'm not going to get into that anymore tonight. But just recognize these things are true. Wisdom is not the exclusive possession of anyone. This is why right in Pirkei Avot, right? Rabbi says, Ezehu Hacham, who's wise? Ohel Moed Mikol Adam, learns from everyone. Okay? We have cell phone technology today and all the wonders of modern technology, and they all didn't come from like these holy rabbis living in Jerusalem. They come from wherever that the powers that be, angels, put into the minds and souls of people to materialize. The world of the primordial form we call the Tzorah. That is what we call in Kabbalah speak the world of Atzilut, the ideal form, the original, the primordial book. We call this the primordial Torah. But the primordial Torah exists in such an abstract form. How do we relate to it? We are not even associated with it. We are, Torah is. What happens when the two of us come together? Why did God even allow the life forms to materialize? And the answer, what good is a book if you don't have anyone to read it? So the life forms come forth in relationship to the existence of structure, to interact with that so as to materialize all the multiple forms, or to permutate all the letters. That is what is happening. That's what reality is all about. So the second world here, okay? This is the world, he says, is the world called Surah veHomer, the world of image and some type of structure, right? And he refers to this as the world of the angels and the spheres. It goes one's above the other. And now he comes out with a major controversial statement, which I have taught for many years, much to the chagrin of some of my peers. And he writes here, V'zeh hefech data tzerufim, and he quotes here, this is the opposite of the view of philosophers, and he's actually specifically challenging Maimonides and the Moreh Nebuchim. And he says that they say lies when they say that angels are only a sechel nivdal, separate intelligence, without homer, without form. And he says, Ve'omrim gamken, and there are those also who say that God created the universe through the intermediaryship of angels. And he emphatically denies that to be the case, as angels are created on day 2. Okay, let's discuss this. Homer and Tzorah. We translate this as image and form. Right? It's right out of the Bible stuff. But we understand it as, if you will, energy and form. Body and soul. Is he saying that angels have bodies? Well, yeah, that's exactly what he is saying. And angels do have bodies. But their bodies are not made out of the same physical matter that ours is. They have what we call energetic bodies, but they are still bodies. This is what Rab Chaim calls in later Kabbalah the kilim, or the vessels. Even the Sefirot have their vessels, and a point that he makes very clear in the Etz Chaim is that the vessels of the Sefirot have the 3 levels of soul, nefesh, ruach, and neshama to each one, with each having their own names. For those of you who want, you can go into the Etz Chaim of Rab Chaim, go into gate 44, and the names of all the vessels. Okay, these are their permutations of letters which materialize elements of their souls. So everything exists in some type of form because letters are vessels. Now, let's address the issue. What exactly are the letters that God used when he created the universe? Well, we all know God spoke Hebrew because the Bible said, let there be, and there was. Let me tell you something about that. You know, there's an old midrash that actually was transformed, became the butt of a joke, in which it says God originally went to the children of Ishmael and said, do you guys want to accept my commandments? And the Ishmaelites said, well, what's in it? And it says, thou shalt not commit adultery. The Ishmaelites said, oh no, we'd love to have our harems and stuff like that. No, not for us, thank you. God then goes to the children of Esau and says, would you like my commandments? And they said, well, what's in it? Thou shalt not kill. Oh, no, we live by the sword, blah, blah, blah. So no, we don't want that stuff. And then they go to the Jews and they say, do you want my commandments? And the Jews say, how much are they? And God says, they're free. He says, oh, I'll take 10. Ha, 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 ha. But it's based on a midrash, which is an element of truth. And what's the truth? What we call the Torah, the instructional guide of the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei consciousness for the Elohim world, God did reveal to the enlightened and the prophets of other nations. And our midrash states that Israel wasn't his first choice. Now you can say, well, that contradicts this and that. Whatever. It's a midrash. It's a story. So don't get bent out of shape over it. But just recognize there's no monopoly to truth. There is the universal Torah, and that permeates to everybody. And then, of course, there is the Torah that we have today called the Torah of the letter Bet, Bereshit, the Torah of Israel, which deals with our laws and commandments and forms the religion of Orthodox Judaism today, because those other forms that call themselves Jewish, let's be honest, guys, you're not really being faithful to Torah. Don't say you are. Okay? You got other paths that's your way, your permutations, cool, groovy. I'm nobody's judge here. That's between you and God. But we follow the old ways, the Torah and the mitzvot and the halakha, and that's it. If you're kosher, you're kosher. You're not, in Shalom Israel. But now, wisdom everywhere. Halakha, Judaism, Israel. Well, what does that say about the Hebrew language? If these others from China, India, Native Americans, Mesoamericans, they all had their connections, what does that say about the nature of the language of Hebrew? This is a big argument that's found throughout all Judaic literature. Is Hebrew the language of God and therefore special and holy? Now, why is this even an important question? And the answer is because I get questions myself every day from many of you who are not Jewish. Say, I want to draw close to God, and I want to speak God's language, so I want to learn Hebrew. I don't care if I understand, I just want to read it. I want to reverberate the Hebrew sounds. A point that Avraham Abulafia made very clear is that we talk about the permutations. You can take the permutations, because sounds are sounds, and permutate them and get every single language on the face of the earth. So therefore, even this is a teaching of the Baal Shem Tov, when we do permutations, you don't have to do them in Hebrew. You can do them in French, Spanish, English, Italian, German, French, I said French already, Chinese, Korean, Russian, whatever language that you do. Doesn't matter. Sounds are sounds. And as such, we look to combine different sounds to create ideas, thoughts, fluidity of movement, so that we break that rigidity and create the fluidity, which we know is Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Very important. I'll get to, remember I said I was going to get to the psychology? Well, I'm getting to there. Okay? So look at these things today. You have one of the names of the 12 tribes. His name is God. Gimel, Dalet, God. Okay? Now, I can permutate that God and say it backwards. In Hebrew is dog, which is fish. Or I can change a vowel and make it dog in English. Or flip that around and make it G-O-D, God. Hey, all I did was just take two letters and played with them. And I got a guy, I got a dog, I got a fish, and I got God. Oh, what's the connection? It sounds so mysterious. No, that's just, everything's interconnected. That's the message. That was Abu Lafia's teaching. When we want to fulfill the messianic ideal of recognizing Malokol Haaretz Kavodo, God's complete everywhere in the universe and everything, this is the secret. This is the understanding. So know and understand this. We live in this finite, physical world. Emphasis on that word, finite. Why? Because in this world, letters are always recombining, restructuring. We call this the process of life and death. This is the absolute nature of this reality, and nothing about that will ever change. You will never ever have a single structure which is never changing, because that's din, severity in the most rigid of form, and that's death. Life is the complete multiplication and transformation of all the different letter combinations. So, my essence, my energy, 60 some odd plus years ago, congealed itself into the growing essence which became this physical body. And this physical body now inhabits my energy. I call myself in this structure Ariel, as you know. But eventually the structure which is Ariel is going to go its way like everything else has to go its way. And I, my Tzorah, will exist, but will find a different Homer. Question in text here. How do frequencies interact with the creative letters? This is very important. Let's go and discuss that. In the beginning, God created the world, as we know, using what he spoke. He spoke. What did he speak? He didn't speak Hebrew. Let's be honest, okay? I'm not the physicist, as you know, but they talk in physics, the super string theory, how everything at the most subatomic level, these little vibrating strings, sounds. Well, there you go. We understand the power of the sonar, the power of sound. And when we want to alter consciousness, we use sounds, chants, and the like. And these help us experience the other realms. Apparently, certain sounds can break the rigid lock of our consciousness to this physical singular reality to experience some of those other realities. So different combinations of sounds are used in specific ways to open the locks, if you will. And in that respect, we have what we call holy names and the like. And all of these work, and the word I use is mechanical, because they work in accordance to a specific pattern of things. Now here is where things get interesting, because you got to remember how this works. Remember I said we're going to get into the psychology last? Well, here we are. We're the Space Brothers. We came from out there. I don't know if we came from another planet, but maybe a different dimension. Did it. Here's a solid piece of paper. See that? make believe that this flat piece of paper is our universe. Everything happening on here, like a two-dimensional reality. I'm in a third-dimensional reality, right? So for this two-dimensional reality here, it's not aware of my finger because it's above it. When I touch that reality, then there's an interaction between dimensions, and it's aware of my finger in this place. Lift up my finger, and it's gone. Magic. Put it back down. There it is. Gone. Well, when we want to talk about going into other dimensions, it's kind of like going off the paper into the other dimension. Now, if you're a two-dimensional being and you want to experience that third dimension, the first experience you're going to go is, what the is this? Pretty cool. I even saw a Simpsons episode where they actually simulated this, with Homer leaving the one going into a different dimension. It's very, very weird. So this is why someone is asking about the nature of the Ruach Elohim. Well, this is the life force energy, right? That's what keeps the second level, this two-dimensional level here. So here, let's say, for example, is our three-dimensional world, and the spiritual dimension of the angels is the one that comes in and out. But there's a higher level than that, and that's the one who tells the angels what to do. So we have the dimensions in their grades. God is that permeating consciousness, the mind of the universe. Some call the Sechel HaPoel, the active intelligence. Out of the divine came a mirror reflection. And that mirror reflection is consciousness, which became consciousness. I don't want to say became humanity. Why? Because it's not just humanity. Conscious sentient beings are all over existence, and they're not just human. I'm reading something in text makes no sense, but what can I say? There is entities all over, higher, lower dimensions, and we're all a reflection of the original. Those who achieve that reflection in our Torah tradition are called Yisrael. And they read the original book, the Torah, primordial Torah. And this is the underlying secret of why it says in the Zohar, Pashat Ekev, Dav Ayin Gimel, Kudsha Berechu Oraita B'Yisrael Kulan Had. God, Torah, Israel are one. Now, we have to take this out of parochial, religious, and get to a real understanding of this. Because if you look at our human experience, we all know that we have, here's the psychology, we have a split brain. We have a right brain and a left brain. And they both operate in radically different ways. What we call our left brain, which controls the right side of the body, which for most of us is the dominant side, right-handed and stuff like that. That's what we call the rational, the logical, the analytical, the structured. That corresponds to, guess what? Elohim consciousness. And it's rigid and the structure of the form of this world. But we're more than Elohim, are we not? We also have the Yud-Ke Vav-Ke within us. And that's where our right brains come in. And the right brain is dominant. The right brain is the controller. The right brain accesses the unconscious and gives us intuition. It gives us imagination. We call it in Hebrew the Sefer Chochmah, and corresponded to the name Yud-Ke Vav-Ke. So there you got inside you, Yud-Ke Vav-Ke on the right, Elohim on the left. Of course, the purpose, merge the two together. But that is the whole path and purpose of our prophetic Kabbalah, of why and how and what we do to integrate to experience the higher realities. So again, our two-dimensional reality, that's our Elohim world. Yud-Ke Vav-Ke is up here. So we use the vibration of harmonic sounds to rise up into the higher dimension, or to go out of left brain consciousness into right brain consciousness. And this is the process. And if you go off into right brain consciousness, and you start experiencing these higher realms and realities. Remember, you don't just go there and see it like it is. You go there because you're still in here, and you see it through the framework of your present state. That's what we call the klipot, or the husks and shells. It's kind of like an icky slime that sticks to you, which keeps you stuck here. This is why we refer to prophecy as an espek loria she'ena mi'ira, an unclear mirror. For many of you, if you read my Kosher Torah writings, I published this just today on my emails. If you're not on my email list, KosherTorah.com, get on our email list. And I even put this up on Facebook and on YouTube, a parable called My House. And my parable was very simple. I made up a story. I said I was sitting in my house one day, and I noticed that there were two guys outside looking into my dirty mirror, my dirty window, arguing about what's it like inside my house. So I go outside, and I say, hey guys, what are you arguing? We'll argue about what's inside your house there. I say this, he says that. And I says, well, rather than argue about it, why don't you just come on in, I'll show you. No, stupid idea, ridiculous, garbage, nonsense. And what the heck could you possibly know what's inside the house, you idiot? Come on in and see. Shut up with that inside stuff. We'll tell you what's in there because we can see through the window. Well, my parable continued. I went back inside. I shut up. I don't want to listen. And I went and I kicked back in my chair and I said, I'm going to go take a nap. Let them sit and argue. Because if they don't want to experience and see for themselves, then what good is all their bantering and arguing? This is the reality with regards to spiritual experience. Today, our world is more and more and more rigid in Elohim consciousness. Rigid, more rigid, more rigid, more rigid, blocking out all fluidity. And this is that rationalist that movement that started centuries ago. I don't see it, I don't believe it. We have, in quote, rationalist rabbis teaching what they call rationalist Judaism, and they don't even recognize the nature of their own psychological veil, which disables them from being able to experience the higher realities that are accessible through consciousness to those who want to come inside from the out. Stop looking through a dirty window and come and sit in the house. Pull up a chair and I'll show you around. Not like you need me. See for yourselves. This is our destiny, our mission, our purpose in Torah. So, the rabbi speaks about the creation of light. Light is life. It is the essence of everything. Everything materializes for the manifestation of life. Now, here's something. Let's bring it into modern times. As we all know, scientists are working overtime to create computerized intelligence, artificial intelligence. Can they succeed? Well, I believe they definitely can. And you have the likes of Elon Musk and say, well, it's the greatest danger to humanity. Why? Why? Because artificial intelligence is another permutational form of life. And if they exist within the Elohim context of, in quote, survival of the fittest, then they might look at humanity as being a hostile competition and wipe it out. Amongst nations today, and I won't mention any names, you have rising nations and falling nations. And the rising nations look at the competition and say, you know something, it's time to put them down. We're living in that right now. So if artificial intelligence, think Skynet from Terminator kind of stuff. Think of the Matrix in that. Are these, in quote, robots, if they are going to ever be real robots, are they going to want to destroy us? I don't know. Simply because I don't know that permutation of combination of letters or sounds or energies, which will they materialize. And they will, in quote, evolve based upon the form and the structure of, well, if we have angels, higher intelligences guiding us, you can rest assured there are going to be higher intelligences guiding them. And what forms they will take and where they will go? Will they have souls? Will they be alive? I don't know if we got that now, but I can certainly recognize the possibility of that occurring. And it would be amazing to be able to interact with a 5th, 6th, 10th generation artificial intelligent life form and interact with it as a present human being to see just how radically different we are. Are they higher or lower or better or worse? I don't know, but they would be very different. Just like we interact with what we today call malachim, angels. So permutations of letters. If you want to perform the function within a meditative context, by all means. But can you use these permutational forms magically to create the reality that you yourself seek? That brings us into the realm which we call idolatry. Avodah zarah, meaning that you think that you can create a reality that the universe itself is not going to materialize. This is why throughout the Torah we are called the servants of Yud-Keh Vav-Keh. We're not the servants of Elohim. We're the servants of Yud-Keh Vav-Keh, which means that we go with the flow. Kind of like in the Tao, you go with the Tao, you go with the Wu Wei. Our job is to serve Hashem, do what Hashem wants. Like we say, not my will, but thy will be done. And when we integrate and experience that level of consciousness, which is the purpose of why we do the letter permutations, expanding the rigidity so as to see the different things. This is what Abulafia did. This is how he received his revelations and insights. No, he never received Jedi powers. He never became the old Darth Vader. Right? Abulafia never walked into Rome, taking the Pope, with one of those Darth Vader grasps and says, I will destroy you. Or any of this other kind. I find your lack of faith disturbing. None of that nonsense. Come on. That's not real. But when the power of life, which is the soul, which is the mind, expands into the higher dimensions and reality, you get to interact with the flow of things and you find your unique parameters for your soul, your permutations. And on one day, you're permutated like this. And the next day, you change your permutations and you're like this. And the next day, you change your permutations and you're like that. Because life is an ever-evolving, flowing, never-ending story. And when you practice this properly, you will recognize the real power that's there. It's not magic. It's not like that. But it's a natural evolution of flow. When you think everything has to be rigid like this, that's the Elohim. Right? But when you think everything is just chaos, no. Thesis. Antithesis. Synthesis. You're not a slave other than to Yud-Keh Vav-Keh, which is the natural flow of life in the universe. And when you surrender to that, you will find your path, your destiny, your truth, and your individual place in the greater scheme of things. And that, of course, is the whole purpose of Torah. Well, on that note, we pretty much covered what we needed to say tonight. So anyway, for those who do give a $180 donation to our school, I send you one of these Kabbalistic amulet style t-shirts. There's a big amulet on it. You can wear the amulet. It's supposed to have blessings and powers and stuff like that. So we thank you for your support. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, be so kind, click the subscribe, like button, and all the rest of that stuff. I'm an old rabbi. I'm old school. I'm not one of these professional guys who push this in all of that business settings. So too bad. We've managed pretty much as we've gone through the years. But okay, Be'ezrat Hashem, God be willing, we'll pick this up next time. Check out the courses that we have available for you on KosherTorah.com. If you're not on the email list, check stuff out. I got good stuff coming out every week from my guys. And I'm pretty sure, because my Rabbanit is inspiring me, probably with a stick, to do a private Zoom class for our supporting students. And that's going to happen. God be willing, it's going to happen. Don't know when, don't know where, don't know how, but we're going to make that happen. So for those of you who are supporting students, you want that level of education, of interaction on a personal level, come join us. Like I said, the door of my house is open. You don't need to stand outside and argue what you see through a dirty window. Come join us. Ariel Tzadok here, KosherTorah.com. I'll see you all next time. Shalom.